So welcome everybody. I would say it's lovely to see you, but we can't see you, but we know you're here. And we're looking forward to all your questions. So hi, I'm Hayley Mackenzie. I'm the founder of Script Angel. And I am really excited that tonight the brilliant James Capel, who's the founder of Scribe Lounge, is going to quiz me with my Studio 21 creative director hat on to answer all your questions about the Studio 21 script competition, with its full name this year of the Studio 21 Scene by Scene script competition, because it's a little bit different. So I'm going to hand over to James yeah, I'll answer as many questions as we can get through tonight.
Brilliant. Well, it's so nice to see you with your other hat on. I'm going to treat you like a totally different person from this moment forth. Brilliant. Well, I mean, yeah, obviously everybody knows mainly what I would say if they're here, they would know what the Studio 21 script competition is in general. But it would be good to know what it is in general, but we will obviously get into how it's different this year. So if we can start by covering that basis. So a bit about what Studio 21 is as a production company and how the script competition kind of works, perhaps how it came about, and then tell us a little bit about how it is slightly different and why, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So
But 4 questions there for you.
yeah, no, it's good. I'm going to try and remember them all. Yeah, so Studio 21 was founded about 5 years ago, maybe more, by myself, and my partner in Studio 21 is David Jenkinson, and David is the founder and managing director of C21 Media, which some of you might know. It's a news organization for our industry, so they post all the information about what's going on in our industry, the TV industry generally, and internationally, all over the world. They have journalists embedded globally. And they also run quite a lot of fantastic conferences and events. So the biggest one that they run is Content London, which is where about 2,000 producers from all over the world come to London for a 3-day conference. And commissioners from all over the world come from every platform. You know, all the big streamers come, send their commissioners, all the broadcasters come, not just from the UK, but again, internationally. And it's a great opportunity for the business to get together and discuss what's going on and hear what people are looking for and what the challenges are and what's coming up in the industry. And so my background is scripted development. As I think lots of you know, I am passionate about discovering writers, discovering projects, and then developing and nurturing those writers and projects. And so together we decided to found a production company because we have a very shared passion, we have similar tastes. And I know that kind of early part of the process, the writers, the development, where all the good stuff happens, let's be honest. And David very much knows the business end of the business, co-production, finance, that kind of market end of the business really well. He's also incredibly creative, and I know a bit about commercial. So we cross over a lot, but we also have kind of specialism, so we complement each other very well. So we founded a production company that specifically was to find new writers, progressive new voices that we felt were not being supported in the industry. Those kind of voices and projects where you get a little bit of traction and people go, oh, you're really exciting, but then nobody actually picks the project up. Everybody waits for someone else to go first. That writer, that project, you know the type?
Yep, absolutely.
And we wanted to back that writer, that passion project, that talent, and actually try and get them away. And so the script competition is really specifically designed to do that. And that's why it's a fairly open call. It is open to rep writers, but it's also open to non-rep writers, because we want the best writers and they could come from anywhere.
Yeah, sure.
And
We'll talk a little bit about that sort of the rep side of things a bit later on, but what's the difference then with this year as opposed to previous years then? How is it evolving?
Yeah, so we've always been fairly open in terms of the kind of projects we want. We kind of want best in class. So our slate at Studio 21 is very mixed. It does range from half-hour shows up to 60-minute shows. They are all TV. We're not in the feature space at this point. But they're also incredibly broad range of genres. We have out and out comedy shows that will go to comedy commissioners. We have thrillers. We have romance stories. We have crime stories. We have every genre. If it's interesting, we probably are going to love it. So yeah, David and I have very eclectic tastes, individually and together. And so when a project is interesting and exciting, it doesn't matter what genre it is for us. But this year, we are looking for something a little bit different. It's not as daunting as it sounds, I hope. But what David and I want to do is very much kind of explore where the industry is heading. It is quite traditional in a lot of ways. The content is not, but who it's aimed for is quite traditional. It's broadcasters, it's linear TV, it's the streamers, and I know that might sound really, exciting, Netflix, global streamer, but actually that kind of content is just traditional long form content. Right? They might be taking global rights, but it's still the same kind of show, watched in the same way, consumed in the same way, with actually quite a similar audience to a traditional broadcaster. But that's not where the eyeballs are at the moment. The eyeballs are moving into other spaces, into digital, onto YouTube. And we are really interested in that shift and that move between short form content, which is massively consumed, and long form content, which is kind of the tradition of the industry. And our take is, because lots of people have created long form shows before and then chop them up and put them out, and everyone's still, lots of shows do that even now, right? You can go onto Channel 4 on YouTube and they've got lots of channels, and they'll put out eps of Hollyoaks chopped up into short form content and into story strands and sorts of good stuff, but no one's really done it the other way around. So that's what we're interested in. We're interested in taking a long form piece, so a traditional pilot script for a longer series, but that every scene would be released as if it was a short form episode in its own right.
Every scene.
Every single scene will go out on its own.
Wow, interesting.
I know.
What a challenge. I mean, when you're saying sort of short form, then are you thinking that, because obviously the content is changing and the way it's being consumed, there is no doubt about it. But is it limited to younger viewers, or is it so, because I don't know the statistics around this or anything like that,
I
so
do.
is it limited to younger viewers, or is it something
No.
that's more broader and
I mean,
it must be.
The 18 to 35s are definitely leading that move, but is absolutely not restricted to that demographic. So Creative Cities convention just 4 or 5 months ago, Ofcom showed their most recent data on this, because obviously they are fantastic at reporting on what's actually happening in the industry, who's watching what and where, and all the actual stats of what's happening rather than the anecdotes. And in the 18 to 35s, YouTube is the #1 platform for viewing by a country mile. And
Wow.
35 is quite a big demographic.
We're not old chunk. Yeah.
We're not talking, 12 to 20. We're talking up to 35 demographic. But when you broaden it out and say all demographics, YouTube still comes in second or third.
Wow. Yeah. So it really is a sizable chunk there.
And the growth is across all demographics, and the shift.
I mean, I have to say it's because I was surprised when I heard this, because that's why I'm so interested to ask you about it. And so, if anything, it's a bold move to try and get ahead of that curve, and because this is obviously great. This is obviously great for everybody applying, but it's also a great opportunity for you as a production company to get some great talent through your doors. And so for you to think in this way, it's a bold move. It's a bold move to kind of get ahead of the curve. So impressive.
But again, I mean, I'm really curious and interested, and hopefully kind of progressive and forward thinking. And C21 also has a very long history of being right at the front edge of what's happening,
Yeah, yeah.
right at the front edge. Um,
Okay, brilliant.
so between us, we feel like we can have a good go at this. Um, and also, I think from a writing point of view, the reason we said we did think about positioning it as short form to long form, right? So create something where there are short form episodes and then they come together somehow. But then I thought, actually, we already write in short form because we write in scenes. And
Yeah,
really good screenwriting should mean that every scene has a beginning, middle, and end and a turn. And
yeah, totally.
right, that's just really good screenwriting, even on a traditional hour-long pilot for a series, right? That's just good writing.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about um, what the practicality behind what you're asking for here in terms of
Yeah,
length, because I can see a couple of questions coming in on this about, the length of these scenes and what constitutes a scene and all
yeah,
this sort of jazz.
yeah.
But before that, I want to start broader first and kind of look at the kind of eligibility behind people that are entering and what it is that they can enter for you to look at. What is it that you're kind of looking for in that sort of eligibility of it?
So
Who's it
in
for?
terms of, yeah, so in terms of the material, we are asking for the same material we have always asked for. And the same eligibility criteria we've always had. And so what we want writers to submit is a, a, what we would describe as a long form traditional pilot episode script for a longer series. So the first step, the pilot script for your, let's say, 6x60 show, right? And you want it to go out on BBC One at 9 o'clock eventually, or Netflix, or wherever it is, right? That's absolutely as it has always been. And
Yep.
similarly, we want the series treatment to tell us about that show because we want to know where the story goes after the first episode. So those two documents and the material that you're submitting are the same as we've always asked for. And that pilot script can range from a 30 all the way up to a 60.
And that's not what you're judging this scene by scene on, the script itself, or are you
Yeah.
within that looking
Yes.
for the scenes to be?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yes. So
Gotcha.
you just write a script as you always would, but you are paying very close attention to your scene writing. That's
So it's
all it is.
almost as if you have to think of it the way I would think of it logically. I've been doing some work in the audio space lately, and it's very
Hmm.
similarly done in that it's condensed. So taking 2 hours of drama but chopping it down to 10 minutes. So they're bite-sized things where they have a little mini arc. And what you're proposing is that having a normal, say, 60-minute drama script or a 30-minute drama, comedy drama, whatever it is, it's just that each scene could effectively be pulled out and given as an episode in its own right,
Yeah.
so it can
And when
go
you
along.
watch that episode, when you watch that scene, let's call it a scene episode. It's a scene. You've written it as a scene, but we're going to release it on its own. It makes you want to watch the next scene, which gets released the next day, for example.
And do you have an idea of length of those scenes? Because obviously, like Colin's put in the questions here, you beat me to it, Colin. They vary in terms of their length, don't they? In terms of scenes. So, is there any limit to how long those scenes can be, how short they should be? What are you looking for? Does it matter?
I think it does.
Yeah.
But again, I think this is mostly just good writing coming through. So our guideline is that scenes should ideally be between 1 and 3 pages. But that's again like a great script is very unlikely unless you've earned it and you're in episode 6 and you've really earned it. It's not going to have a 7-page scene. Like good, you just need to watch and analyze great pilot episodes of shows. Most
Well,
good.
it's different storytelling, isn't it? Because what's interesting about this is it's going to force you guys, it's going to force everyone to think about their storytelling in a slightly different way. Because
Yeah,
although you can be doing a broader serial idea, something that could story strand that could stretch across a series, and normally we think about it in bite-sized episodes, with you asking them to bite it down even further, it means that in order to make those mini scenes, those arcs work, the story's going to have to be very specific to it, isn't it? In order to have a change, a twist, something that just
yeah,
rounds it off in some way. It's very
yeah.
specific.
It is really specific and it's really challenging. But again, when I think back to the best shows that I watch and the best, I think it's true on good feature films as well, but the best stuff that I watch and the best scripts that I read, at the end of every scene, I want to read what happens next. It's
Yeah.
just um, and
Yeah.
and the 1 to 3 minutes, 1 to 3 pages for a scene, is we're not going to disqualify a script because it has longer scenes and shorter scenes, because I know there's going to be a question around like establishes, right?
Yeah.
Exterior Jim's house, which lasts for 10 seconds, cut to interior, right? Don't worry about those. We're not going to disqualify a script because you've gone for establishes. We will figure out how we deal with that when we get down into production, right? And further.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm not worried about establishes. But I think the general principle that most scenes are probably somewhere between 1 and 3 pages is a good one anyway. And it's an interesting short form length. So that is how we are going to evaluate the projects. They are going to be evaluated as a long form piece, as we always would, with the
Yeah.
same kind of evaluation criteria about originality and distinctive voice and distinctive sense of place and a compelling story and all the things we would always look for. But there is an additional evaluation criteria about how strong is the scene writing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a different way of looking at things. I'm gonna come to the questions later on, after we've rattled through a bit more of the sort of the general stuff, but there's a couple here that are just related that I just want to get. So like Rachel's reiterated, so a 60-minute script could be as few as 20 themes, but as many as 60, technically, if it's like 1 minute themes, right?
Yeah.
Which is epic in the short form term, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
and and this is this and
Right.
then this it's yeah, I think it's great. I think it's really exciting to try something new. And this question is kind of a bit more, it's on the negative side, but it's worth
Yeah,
raising.
absolutely.
How does this approach differ from Quibi, which I've not heard of, and its failed short form video service?
Yeah, no,
What's the difference? And
we're all over the Quibi story.
I'm not.
Okay. It's a bit tricky
Doesn't
because
matter.
I don't want to misrepresent a business,
No,
because
sure.
this is a question about business failure. The fundamentals of that business were flawed, and the other, which is one of the biggest reasons why it didn't succeed. But the other reason is it was shot for mobile.
Right.
It was shot in portrait.
Right.
All the material was commissioned and produced very specifically to be consumed on mobile only, right? So it
Right.
couldn't
Gotcha.
have a life outside of that consumption, and it couldn't have had a life on YouTube if you choose to watch YouTube on your desktop. It was very, very niche in terms of how it was intended to be consumed.
Yeah, and presumably you as a production company, you can go much broader. You can go in terms of where you're taking this.
Yes, exactly. And that's the ambition for the material and for, the writer and their project and the story they want to tell, is that it has a digital first life in a scene episode release form. But then the long form is also produced and has a life as it would ordinarily with other partners. You're effectively selling the long form version to a traditional partner. And by traditional, I'm including, the global streamers in that, because in my view, they are.
Yeah, because I suppose at the end of the day, you're just thinking about how it would break down into bite-sized pieces and work in its own right. But actually, if you put the whole collection together and put it up on screen, it should work in its own right. I suppose
It
that's
should
why,
work exactly as
it needs to
yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Guys, by the way, in the meantime, if you have questions, keep throwing them in the Q&A box. I will come back to them in a little bit. I just want to ask a couple more things about the rest of the submission process before we circle back. So that made sense to me in terms of, yeah, the page counts and kind of trying to limit as best you can, but the fact that you're not going to penalize people for just kind of for the odd thing overlapping or whatever. When it comes to the series treatment submission, then what other kind of guidelines around that alongside it?
So again, at the moment, the advice and the guide that we've given on what we want that treatment to look like and tell us is unchanged. We're not asking for you as the writer, as the creator, to come up with like a release plan for how this lives on digital, right? If you have that, if you are a digital content creator and that is your wheelhouse anyway, absolutely happy days. Put any ideas you have about that into this series treatment. But if you are coming from the other angle and it's sort of almost accidental that it would be released short form digital first, don't worry about it. Pitch me the long form show in that series treatment. And so a series treatment, I would expect it to have all the things I would usually expect it to have. Our guide for that is 1 to 4 pages. I would suggest if you've been given the space to submit a 4-page version, I wouldn't be sending in a 1-pager, would be my personal advice, but the freedom is there if you so choose. But I would take the space to send me that show. Tell me what happens, like what's the overarching story beyond the pilot. That doesn't mean you have to have it ep by ep broken down at all, but a sense of where season 1 goes. Character biogs, if it's a particularly character-driven piece. Anything about the world, the themes, the things you want to explore, what you want to say with it.
So if I'm writing this series treatment, when it comes to the scene by scene, is it less important at this point? So if I'm thinking about how to explain my show to you,
yes,
I know that within the script, the scenes are going to work in themselves. They're going to be interesting within themselves. But is that something that I would need to articulate how I'm going to do that within this treatment? Or are you more interested in the broader show?
You absolutely do not need to do that. If you have an idea and it's something you're passionate about and you have a vision for the short form scene episode release version of the show, absolutely share it with me. I'm really interested. If you don't and you're like, I have no idea how this works as a scene release, but I know what it looks like as a pilot and that's the show you want to sell me, absolutely pitch that and ignore the fact that it's a scene by scene release strategy.
Gotcha.
Obviously, the script has to stand in that space, but you don't need to try and sell me that vision of that version.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. A few more things that are just sort of general FAQs, I guess. Apologies if you guys are asking these now and I answer them already, or ask them. Can people submit an adaptation of something?
Great question. Yes, if you own the underlying rights. The same as any project where, because we're not looking for a spec script that's a writing sample to then have a conversation with you about something else, which a lot of production companies might be, we are looking for the project. So you have to own the rights to the project.
Yeah.
If it's an adaptation, you have to own the underlying rights of whatever you're adapting. So obviously, if you're adapting your own stage play or novel, I would hope you would own the rights anyway, but Jack.
You never know these days.
If you're adapting something else, you have to own the rights and be able to demonstrate that you own the rights to the underlying material that you're adapting.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. So what are you looking for? Talking about content, in terms of what is it that you're after? Do you have some kind of evaluation criteria that you're sticking to? You said already that the production company is pretty broad in terms of what it's looking for, but could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think we did revise the evaluation questions that the readers use a couple of years ago because it's really important to us at Studio 21 that these projects feel really, really distinctive. They might even be a little bit Marmite. And we like Marmite at Studio 21.
Put that on the poster.
Yeah, I want to be surprised and I want to be challenged, I think. Yeah. The kind of scripts that I respond to, we both do really, are the ones where you're like, oh, this is gonna be hard, but someone else is gonna fall in love with this. Like hard as in commercially.
Yeah. But too good to let go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be a challenge to get it away, right? Because it's a brave piece of writing. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for bravery. Because I get asked on the coaching quite a lot, like, we often work with writers who are on the verge of getting wrapped, who are writing quite good scripts, but those scripts are not quite getting them to that next level.
Yeah.
People are, it hasn't convinced an agent yet. It hasn't got them picked up. It hasn't got them optioned. What are they doing wrong? And often the thing that is missing in those earlier specs that are quite good, right? Good writing, good script, but no one's being wowed, is just it isn't pushing the boundaries. As an artist, they're not really going there.
Sure.
I kind of want projects where you've gone there. Like you've really, it knows you know exactly what it is. You have a really, really strong vision for your show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And pushed it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It makes sense. It's hard to put your finger on what that is because it'll differ from project to project and content, whatever the content
Absolutely.
is. But
It
just
could be kind of out there in kind of in genre boundaries. It could be out there emotionally. It could be just
yeah,
incredibly raw. It could be,
and just something that we haven't seen before. I think that's a lot of it, isn't it? It's so easy to just recreate stuff based on what you've seen on TV or whatever. But what when something's coming from someone and it's not coming from their influences, it's coming from them. And I think there's a real difference sometimes.
yeah, I think the projects that are, we often end up with the projects where the writer wrote it. It's been a really good writing sample for them in terms of like expressing who they are. But
Yeah,
everybody reads it, goes, "Oh, you'll never get that away." That's the kind of stuff we love.
brilliant, brilliant.
Being
Um,
brave would be my advice.
I like it. I like it a lot. How about then the kind of selection process for all this, and how does it work in terms of once everybody's submitted it, how are you selecting stuff, and when are you likely to make announcements and stuff? How does it work?
Yeah, so submissions are open now and close on the 18th of September. We then go into a very intense first evaluation period where a team of independent script readers, so although Script Angel as an organisation is responsible for the first sift read, it doesn't use, we at Script Angel don't use our own in-house coaching team in the evaluation of the script competition. And that is specifically that so that any Script Angel clients can apply to the script competition, because the script competition scripts are evaluated by an independent team of script readers that I bring in every
Mm -hmm. Mm -hmm. Nice.
So we will go through a first sift. Those evaluations will effectively rank all those hundreds of submissions. And I then get involved at kind of looking at the top 50 to make sure we've got a great top 21. And the top 21 then goes forward to Studio 21. And then David and I, as the as Studio 21, will then look at all those 21 scripts and series treatments and pick the
You
top.
take one hat off and put another one on.
Yeah. And between David and I, we will select from the 21, which will be announced. The top 21 are announced. So you get that shortlist goes public. And then David and I read all of those 21 and we select top 6. And those 6 finalists are also announced, and then they are invited to come to Content London. They get a complimentary pass to all 3 days of Content London. We take them out for lunch the day before. They get to do a rehearsal, and then on the first day of conference, they will pitch their shows as a session at Content London to an audience of producers. And the reason we do that is so that if the project, if you're a finalist but your project doesn't win and it isn't picked up by Studio 21, you will have had an opportunity, an amazing opportunity to pitch your show to a room full of
fantastic.
So you get exposure and an opportunity for someone else to pick it up if we don't.
And then what happens if you win?
And then the winner gets a £10,000 prize, which is to either option or acquire the script, depending on the script length. And we move forward as if we would have optioned the script in a traditional way.
So it's just that it's that connection to the industry, isn't it? That's all we were talking about, the value of this before we came on. It's the the value of connecting people to the industry and just giving them that shot. I think that's what's so lovely about something like this.
Yeah. And it's and you meet those other finalists, and usually those 6 finalists spend all 3 days together at Content London, going to lots of sessions. Yeah, meeting, networking, hearing,
Yeah.
learning, yeah, building relationships. It's fantastic.
Fantastic. Do you need to have an agent to enter, or if their project wins or something, like do you need to have an agent for this, or is it for both repped and non-repped writers?
It's for both repped and non-repped. You don't have to be repped to enter your script. There is an industry reference requirement as part of the eligibility criteria, but that industry reference can be almost anyone connected to the industry, if I'm really honest. We've given a list on the website. If you go to studio21.com/terms and conditions, you'll see some more information about what's an acceptable industry reference. It can be a screenwriting short course you took 4 years ago and the tutor from that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a script editor or a development exec or
Yeah. So if you're panicking, thinking I've got no connections whatsoever, I don't know anybody, it can just be any connection that you've got in terms of
and that
educationally or something like that. Yeah,
exactly. Educationally, very important, because that might be so far your only connection to the industry is to have taken a short course. So I'm really happy with that. And in terms of what happens if you are not repped but you win, or because we often also option some of the other finalists who don't win. We would option them in the same way we always any development producer would. And our preference is that to do the deal, to do the option agreement, we would prefer you to be repped. You can absolutely go down the route of representing yourself, and you could take advice from the Writers Guild and get help with that deal, just to make sure you're happy with it as a writer. Our preference is that you are repped. And if you win the competition or are a finalist and we want to option you, but you're not repped, I will do my very best to help you find an agent in order to do the deal. And we will delay picking up the project in order to help.
That's what I was going to say. If you're a finalist and you're interested in an option, I think that you as the writer have got every opportunity then to start to be approaching agents and saying, "Look what I've just achieved
on the
here."
Table, right? Everyone knows the best moment to get an agent is when there's a deal on the table.
Yeah, sure. Do your I can see the questions are rattling in, guys. I'm going to turn to them in a minute. I've got a couple things left, and then we'll come to them. Do you provide feedback for unsuccessful entries?
We don't, I'm afraid. We just don't have the resource to do that. The final 6 get a consultation with Script Angel to help them. If they don't win, but they're a finalist, they get a consultation on the script. But we can't extend it beyond that, I'm afraid. We just don't have the capacity and the resources to do that.
And one thing that I just wanted to raise is it's kind of about it's whether it matters that somebody isn't writing full time. So if they get to this finals and they're like everybody, they have a day job, like we all do, and they're balancing it. Does that matter? Do they don't need to be full-time writers, do they? Does that even come into it?
I'd be very surprised if you're a full-time writer. Amazing if you've done that, if you're.
I think there's this shame sometimes, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really normal. I would expect that you've got other things you have to do in order to pay the bills. Even if you have had some commissions. So I remember when I script edited on Casualty, I was working with some writers for whom this was their first script commission. They might have had a couple of things optioned, but they were few and far between. This was their first script commission. Even if that's a chunky amount of money, it might be 12, 14, 16, 20,000 for an episode commission, script commission. Forgive me, I haven't worked in production for a long time, so I don't know what the script fee on a continuing drama hour is anymore. But it feels big, but it might be the only money you earn in a whole year from your writing. And so I was working with writers who were commissioned on that show and writing an episode, but were also, one writer was a full-time social worker.
Mm.
And that's really normal, right? And I know it's going to be challenging for you to do the work. But there is an expectation, obviously, at that point, once you're in development and you're optioned or you're being commissioned, that you have to find a way to do it and to put the hours in to deliver. But I would also be, I would expect that is challenging, and that you have a part-time job, a full-time job, full-time caring around everybody.
I suppose the point is just not feeling like they have to hide their circumstances from even you that they're working with, the people that are feeling like they have to just take this all on the chin. Your life is your life, your work is your work. You have to do what you can to just be there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really normal. So please don't be embarrassed. You are not alone. It is the majority situation for writers. Really career. And I say career, so these are writers I would consider to be professional working writers. I would still be very surprised if that's your only income.
No, 100%. Great. Let's fire over to some questions then, because there's plenty in this chat box here. I'm going to start with one that came in via email. The script I would like to enter is newly written, but the series concept was optioned for a while with a production company. They never commissioned a script or sent out the idea widely. Is my script still eligible to enter?
This is a tricky one. It's a great question, because the guidance on the eligibility is the script must have been written in the last 2 years, which this has, obviously, but it can't have been previously optioned by another production company.
Gotcha.
But my judgment would be it's fine, because I'd be very surprised if there wasn't some degree of change from the concept that got optioned to the script and the version of the show that is coming into the competition now. So I would say you'll be fine.
Brilliant. Cool. Okay, over to the chat box. First up is Ricky, our admin manager at Scribe Lounge. Hi, Ricky. How you doing? If you're aiming for something like YouTube, does it need to be PG?
Rating. Excellent question. No, don't worry about that. I don't think any of the shows on our slate are PG, James.
Yeah, well, that's it. It comes back to that question of the demographic, doesn't it? And I think as you said, it's pretty wide. So let's not worry about that. And if you're going to be bold,
if you're pitching it as a family show, if that is your imagined audience, don't worry about the platform. It's like, who's your audience? Then obviously I would expect you to be writing something PG. Don't worry about the platform. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah, like it. Joe says, do streamers networks have any interest in a show that has already aired somewhere else, albeit in a fractured way? Would that be against the guidelines?
That's a really good question. So I think if the version of the project you're submitting to us has already been produced, then yes, it probably isn't eligible, because that's like a step on from it having been optioned. That's like it got
optioned,
it got released, and now you're submitting it to us. No, it wouldn't be eligible, I'm afraid.
Yeah, gotcha. Joe also says, what sort of stories are you looking for? What are the production parameters? For example, are you interested in stories set in the US or period stories, etc., i.e. things that are more expensive? Does it matter?
So this is one of those years where we have said our preference is for lower tariff shows. Now, that's not to exclude high budget.
It's hard to know where that line is, isn't it? It's hard to know.
Because what is happening across the board in every territory, and I was speaking to someone who works a lot in France, Spain, Italy, Germany, is a working writer there. This is true across Europe. It's certainly true for us in the UK, and it's very true in the US. All the tariffs are coming down. So by tariff, I mean the amount someone's prepared to pay per episode or per hour for a show. The budget, it has come down everywhere. Everything is down about 30%. Everybody is looking for lower budget stuff.
It just increases your chances, essentially.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, absolutely, we're not ruling it out, and there is a way to do those things, particularly with the changes of production model that are happening at the moment, and the advent of AI and what's happening in post is being absolutely revolutionized at the moment, and costs are coming down. So there is a way to produce the same thing for less, but budgets are coming down even faster than the cost of production is coming down. So in terms of what we're looking for, absolutely international. We have shows on our slate that are not set in the UK and are not aimed to be produced for this market as a first territory. We have shows that are designed for first release in other places, the US, across Europe, Canada, all over. So that doesn't matter at all. It can be set anywhere and designed for that domestic audience primarily first. We do want it to have those kind of universal themes that means it could travel.
Gotcha.
We can be very geographically specific and no, it doesn't have to be UK. Yes, we would be open to period, but we are definitely prioritizing and giving preference to lower budget shows.
Fair enough. Rachel says, what if you select a project, develop it in a scene-by-scene format, and then a linear broadcaster wants it in traditional long-form series? Wouldn't that broadcaster want it to debut on their channel, long-form?
Well, that's the ambition, is it does exactly what you just described, right? But we would find those right partners for both forms at the same time and get them both on board. And we have some very good ideas of what would be in it for the long form broadcast, because it's a great question. Why would you not want it first as the long form? We have some great ideas about what would be the advantage to the long form platform of taking something that's been released in short form somewhere else. We have ideas of how we can address that. What would be special about the long form version?
Yeah, totally.
In the short form version.
Yeah. No, that's it. Yeah. You've thought about this. You've thought about it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And we will have partners on board for both versions. But when we go into development, Studio 21, we go into development with the creative, with the deck, with the script, with whatever we need to do with that writer, just to kind of like really kind of elevate it, as you always would, you know, when you're optioned, as you know, James. Little bit of revision, a little bit of creative development, and then we go and find the right co-producing partner for that show. And in that case, that will be companies that have specialisms in those two areas, in long form and in short form digital.
Yeah, they got previous. Great questions. These are great, guys. So Mark says, top of your list are progressive themes. Could you expand through your lens what that means?
That's a really great question. I want to see stories and voices and people and places that are underrepresented on screen. And that can mean anything. That can mean anything. But I think we are a very progressive company, which means we're very open. So, for example, we have the show that won last year. The title will tell you everything you need to know about it. The title of the show that won last year is called Clitorati.
Beautiful.
Right?
Of course.
Of course it is. It's about a gang of queer women in East London and the diminishing of those queer spaces in East London through a riotous, very funny and very dark driving murder mystery story, but with this gang at the heart of it.
Yeah.
And so it just feels like people and places that we know exist that aren't on screen.
Absolutely. Just coming at the world from a progressive point of view, right? Just knowing that there's something new to say. So, for example, as a sort of seemingly like middle-class white man, I just have to make sure that what I'm talking about in my world has a new spin on it. You know, I'm looking at my world from a different point of view. There is still something else to be said, you know, that's kind of can push it forward, you know, that hasn't already been done. Yeah,
absolutely. Because another show on our slate, and these are all on the Studio 21 website. You can't see the material, obviously, but you can see the title and the image for the show. There's another show called The Quiet Stones, and that is much more traditional in terms of the character mix. It's not telling queer stories. It's not doing any of those things. I think I can hear the kind of the anxiety in the question of like, I'm not from or writing stories about an
Yeah,
underrepresented group.
rightly
How
so. Yeah.
Quiet Stones is none of those things, but it is progressive in its view of the world and the climate challenge and environmentalism and activism and all sorts of really interesting spaces. So that feels progressive to me again because it's stories that are around, but they're just not making it onto screen.
Nice. Yeah, that's a tough question. It's a great question, Martin. It's a tough one to answer. So yeah, brilliant. Dimpner says, would you say there's a limit to the number of characters? This isn't really an ensemble cast, is it? I'm thinking sitcom. Because
Oh
it's tough, because short scenes, it's tough. Could it be tough with loads of characters?
no, I don't think it is. I wouldn't be worried about an ensemble show.
Nice.
I wouldn't worry about that at all. I think it's challenging if you're trying to manage. So again, I can hear the anxiety about like story strands, like cutting from these characters to those characters. And so when you release it, the scene doesn't hook into the same characters in the same story.
Yeah.
Don't.
It's the problems of a serial, isn't it? It's but then it's just a new way of looking at things.
Yeah.
Somebody else says, would a script that has previously gone through a competition such as the BBC Writers Open Call disqualify it? So
No.
if it's been in any other competition, no.
No,
Only if it's been optioned.
only if it's been optioned. Yeah. Or produced, as we discovered earlier. Yeah.
Rachel says, I have been working on improving how I link my scenes to one another thematically using sound, dialogue, and images, etc., including overlapping, especially sound from one scene to another. Do you have any thoughts about how this may work in the scene to scene requirement? Because, of course, you're talking about full circle, right? And not necessarily, but that still could constitute as a hook to something, to the
exactly, because
next
if you
scene.
hear something in that at the end of that scene, you're
Yeah.
curious about what it's leading into. I wouldn't. Transitions, great scene writing. I love that you're paying attention to your scene transitions. I think that's fantastic. Please keep doing it, and don't worry about it for this. I think it's a hook, and
Exactly.
we'll worry about that when we get further into.
It's changing the way that you look at it. Yeah, it's a hook into the next scene, because what you don't want to do is close off every scene. It's not about having something closed off. It's like treating every scene as an episode, so that it's got to follow on. It's got to feel like it has to be pulling you to the next scene.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes sense. Donald says, I've got two very different ideas. Is there a limit to a number of entries per person/team?
No, there is no limit to the number of entries, but each entry or submission is only one project. So, as you know, so each entry incurs a fee to submit, and that would only cover one project. But you could do multiple submissions.
Sure,
Each
gotcha.
one would be
Makes
separate,
sense.
separate fee. Yeah.
Somebody else says, do you know how many roughly applications you get each year? I think they're just wondering what the competition is.
Yeah, it's a great question. We don't get as many as you would think we get given the prize. So this is not BBC Writers Room, right? We are not as well known as that. BBC Writers Room gets what, 5,000 submissions on an open call. Someone's going to correct me in the chat or Q&A, I'm sure. But yeah, kind of ballpark. And For Screenwriting gets a similar mad number, which is why they shrunk their window to a fraction of a second. Sorry, Philip.
Yeah, well, he has to. He has no choice. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really overwhelming volume of submissions. We are not in that space at all. We are. It's ranged over the last kind of 5 or 6 years between about 300 and kind of heading up towards 1,000, but it's never been more than that. So way less than most of those open calls.
But then it's a different premise to this whole competition. It's very different. You're offering something for a different sort of level of writer and connecting them in a slightly different way. So it makes sense. Let me have a look. So Ed, your questions about ensemble versus central protagonist we've kind of covered. Rachel, I think your question about global appeal, I think we've oh no, then this counts. Hayley, would you say that you're looking for projects with a strong sense of place? Do you also want them to have global appeal? And do you believe that all projects need to have a strong sense of place? Is it?
Yes,
Obviously,
absolutely. Uh, my least favorite kind of script to read, because I just don't believe it when I read it, is a script set somewhere, like a small town, could be anywhere. And when you ask the writer where it's set, they're like, well, it could be a small town in southern England, or it could be a small town in the US. And you're like, yeah, but the fact that you don't know where it is coming off on the page that I don't believe this place exists, because you don't know it either. Be really, really specific, really specific. And I don't care where in the world it is. Just be very geographically specific. And the most geographically specific shows are global. And the
Yeah,
most
100%.
successful shows are really, really specific to the place that they are set.
Knowing your place means the reader gets an immediate image in their mind. I've read so many scripts where they've been unspecific. Therefore, my brain has gone to the nearest thing I think is relevant. And
Yeah.
often it's way wrong, which then messes with the story and then kind of just doesn't, I want you to take full charge of where I am and what I'm doing, as a reader.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Somebody else says, great question though, Haley, because somebody else says, say you're shortlisted but don't win and then are approached by a producer who saw your pitch. Would you recommend trying to gain an agent representation before agreeing to any offer? Yeah.
Yes.
It's gonna
Absolutely.
help, right? There are places like the Writers Guild and stuff that can help you with these things. But like we said, somebody's approaching you, right? That's your ammo. Take it to agents.
And
Show them
also
what you've just
ask,
achieved.
yeah, and don't be embarrassed to say to the producer who wants to option it that you're not wrapped, and ask them to recommend someone. Everybody who works in this space would go, oh,
Yeah.
I know an agent who can really help you with this. We want, and that's what I'm doing at Studio21. I'm not wearing my script angel hat when I do that. As a producer at a production company, I am trying to help that writer get repped for them, because I know
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
this is. And of course, we all know lots of agents, and we'll have some ideas and we can write a recommendation for you and help you out. So absolutely ask that producer to recommend someone and make an introduction for you.
Yeah, definitely the best way. Nice.
If they are any
Uh,
good as a producer, James, just going to say, they will want you to be repped. If a
yeah.
producer
Well,
is
it makes the whole
discouraging,
deal better, doesn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. If any producer is discouraging you from getting an agent and wants you to rep yourself, honestly, I know this is going to go out publicly afterwards, but I'm going to stand behind it. I'd be nervous.
Yeah, I would, because
Yeah,
they're actively hoping to take advantage of you, right?
yeah,
Really what they want to do is they want a watertight script that works for everybody. They should want to care about you as a writer and your rights as much as theirs, right?
yeah, absolutely.
That's just professionalism.
Yeah.
Um, I can see the time, and there's still tons of questions. Is there the same freedom with format as with genre, i.e., would an anthology series be as welcome as an ongoing serial?
Oh, great question. Yes, they're definitely harder to get away. Like harder than any of the progressive stuff we're doing. Anthologies are incredibly hard. I know everyone's going to quote me Black Mirror, but please don't, because that wasn't commissioned in the last 12 months, so it's not a great example.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be excluded, but if it's an amazing project as an anthology, it would certainly probably make the shortlist. Whether it would win as an anthology, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it would be, yeah, it would be challenging.
Mm-hmm. A quick one from Donald. He says, regarding industry reference, if you're breaking in from something, say theatre or other forms of creative writing, can the reference be from those fields, and
Yes,
could they be from over the pond, like in the US?
yes to all of those. Yes to associated fields, any other medium, prose writing, theatre, audio, anything. Yeah.
Let's have a look. Are limited episode series or serials eligible, or is it preference to returning series that can come back year after year? Because obviously that's something that we hear from that's from Golvinda. That's stuff that we hear from commissioners. Returning
Yeah,
only.
it is. You can have a vision of it that is a closed, say, six-parter. I wouldn't be aiming for something that's shorter than that, like a 4x60. They are, at the moment, no one is commissioning those kinds of shows.
Mm.
So I would be aiming for something that is at least a 6x whatever your episode length is. It's fine if you don't have an idea, but if it's very, very close, that might be challenging.
Mhm.
As in, like, you are absolutely determined there is no way the door is going to be ajar. If you're open to how the door could be ajar at the end of it,
Sure. Yeah.
that would be preferable. You don't have to have a vision for what that looks like, but it would
Yeah.
be better if you were open to it. Yeah.
There are countless examples of great shows that look like limited series that have come back, and you think, how have they come back? And then they
Yeah.
come back brilliantly, or not so much. It
Yeah,
depends.
not always, but
But
I
the
think
door is open.
an openness to that would be preferential. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Rue is getting technical. When the stipulation is that every scene needs a turning point, how loose is this? By which I mean, can clusters of scenes where transitions are continuous be classed as a scene as long as they run to a max 3 pages?
No, for
That
me, a
makes
scene is
sense.
a scene. It needs a new scene header because you've changed location. My
Yeah,
definition.
so like say it's a bunch of people moving through a building, they're walking, talking, I suppose then you've got to think about how you're going to tell that scene and what's happening within those those transitions.
Yeah, I think within the same building, because we have this debate in formatting all the time when you get into production about its interior house and we move from the bathroom to the bedroom, down the stairs and into the hall. That I think you could probably get away with as a single scene header because we're interior one house. If they're coming out the house and walking down the street and going somewhere else, that is not one scene. Sorry, being
Mhm.
very.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. Georgina says, does it make sense to have a couple of scenes that are ideally time limited to throw on, that are scenes that are ideally timed to throw on TikTok too? So, e.g., 21 to 34 seconds, or is that totally stupid? Not totally stupid, you
It's
are,
not
Georgina.
stupid. I mean, like I say, the 1 minute is a guideline. If you've got scenes that you think are really exciting and stand on their own and turn and hook into something else, and they're shorter than that, go for it.
Brilliant. Why not? Jake asks, sorry, I'm rattling through these because I'm conscious of the
No.
time. Jake says, are there any existing shows that come to mind that fulfill the criteria of what you're looking for the script competition as a key example? Has anybody done it yet?
Not to our knowledge. A couple of people have given me examples in the US, but they were only released as the short form version and stitched together, but the long form version, as far as I know, never actually went out. People have attempted things in this ballpark, but not quite like this, and not recently, as far as I know. But we are talking to a lot of very, very good people in both spaces. So we are confident about this as a commercial proposition.
Okay. Colin says, how many episodes would be the sweet spot? For example, if you write 3-page scenes, that would be 20 scenes for a 1 hour pilot, but how many 1 hour episodes? Do you have a preference for how many?
Yes, mentioned this a bit, but happy to clarify. My preference would always be 6. I think it's very hard to get any run shorter than that away. 2-parters, 3-parters, 4-parters are very difficult to go.
Yeah. Fair enough. Angela says, for the project in production, is there an opportunity for the writers who have production experience to be involved in the production as an exec producer, etc.?
That is to be negotiated with your agent. That would be a clause in the
Yeah.
option agreement. It would be your agent will absolutely push for an EP role to be negotiated between the producer and your agent. But absolutely, that conversation is going to happen for sure.
So let's have a look. How many past entries we've got? That one. Anthology shows, yes, absolutely. Ed, how about flashback scenes? They wouldn't seem to work very well in the short form series, would they?
Excellent question. I don't know because I haven't read the script through this lens with flashbacks.
So be that person. Go for it.
Yeah, I would say be brave, but think about those flashbacks in exactly the same way. How
Yeah,
does
it's
it, if you watch the previous scene, does it, because
well,
I think great flashbacks in any normal release show should be hooked into and out of anyway. It should be hooked
or
into and out.
any good teaser as well. Any good teaser
Yeah,
is kind of can be kind of circular, can't it?
yeah.
Or intro or
You
whatever. Yeah,
need
nice.
to think about how we're hooking into it and how we're hooking out of it back into the present day, but that stands anyway, just in good writing.
Yeah, push the envelope. Plus, I don't suppose you're looking for absolute perfection here. If people give it a
It
go and try
depends.
stuff, and it's say like 80% of the scenes work brilliantly, but there's a 20% in there that don't quite land.
That's
But
what
you've made it
development for.
work. You make it work. Yeah, absolutely. Just be bold, go for it. Be that person. Be
Yeah,
that person. What is the entry fee?
it's £40. And it is,
Gotcha.
we haven't, despite insane inflation, 2 years ago, it hasn't gone up since we launched the competition 8 years ago.
Gotcha. Somebody says this regarding this stipulation that the script must be written within the last 2 years, but some scripts can be developed over a number of years, go through many drafts and switch between different formats from short film to stage to film to then TV. So the latest draft can be totally different from the original version, but that still make it ineligible?
No, I think the 2 years is about this. What we don't want is a script you sent out everywhere 10 years ago and nothing happens. Now you put, but it went everywhere and everyone saw it. And now you're pulling
But a
out
new iteration.
but a completely a reimagining of said 10-year-old script. Absolutely fine.
So it's not a stipulation in order to catch you out. It's a stipulation in order to kind of keep you fresh and putting your best stuff in at the best time, right?
It shouldn't feel like a script you wrote 10 years ago. Like, because we were writing different stuff then and the world was different. So I'd be worried. So rethink it. Yeah.
There's literally like 2 or 3 left, and so I'm going to rattle it. I'm going to do them. Would you consider projects if English is not the main language?
Oh,
Is it meant that it's in English, but English is not the language mainly used? So like it features other languages.
If it features other languages, that's absolutely fine. The script has to be written in English and be readable by someone who is only an English speaker.
Brilliant.
So you
Makes
need
sense.
to be English for that dialogue.
Makes sense. Another great question for Donald. There's a montage in his script. Does that count as a scene? Montages. Great question.
Montage is a great question. I'd write it and see how you feel. I'd say take a punt. I'd be surprised if we wouldn't disqualify something for a montage.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Again, be bold, do it. Who cares what they say? Donald, just write it and chuck it in and say, take this, you're going to love it.
Yeah,
absolutely. And finally, Colin says, are writing teams, as in two writers, eligible?
Absolutely. Yes, they are. Yeah, we've had a number of writing teams very successfully reach their final 6 numerous times over the years.
Beautiful. Well, that is the completion of the question. Brilliant. Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to seeing all these entries and seeing what this
best of luck, guys.
he comes up with. Good luck, everybody. And thank you.
Best of luck.